you would understand my Danish, I don't know. But I have agreed to make this in English because the idea is that Derek and I will try to link what we are saying to each other. So as I'm the first one, it's difficult for me to link it to Derek's. So Derek will be the one who will make the linking in the end. We have been talking a little bit about how to structure the two presentations, and I will mainly deal with what's going on in the school and in the classroom. And I have been asked to talk a little bit about some international European trends, but of course I'll also deal with some of the projects that are going on in my own country in Denmark. And then I will try to clarify some of these trends, and I'll deal with some of the main topics that are in the core of the development of the health promoting school and health promotion and health education in schools at the moment. So I should probably also say that I am the national coordinator of the Danish network of health promoting schools. I've been involved in developing health education in the national curriculum in Denmark, and in addition to that, I'm a director of a research program we have at the Danish University of Education, the research program for health and environmental education. We are 25 people working with environmental and health issues viewed from an educational point of view in many different settings, of which school is one of the settings. I show this to you because this is the international European criteria for a health promoting school. It was adopted at a conference in Greece in 1996, and they are still, if you can say so, the criteria or the underpinning principles of a health promoting school. And I'll mainly talk about empowerment and competence, since the title of the conference here is Competence for Life. So I'll talk about action competence that we've been working a lot with in my own country, and I'll talk about the curriculum. And then the idea is that Derek, he will broaden the perspective and talk about schools and what kind of views we need to have when we look at schools as developing entities. So that is how we have tried to distinguish between the two presentations. I should probably say that if you ask people around in Europe, what is the unique of a health promoting schools nowadays, they would say that it is because we have developed a new paradigm or a new approach that we are working with. But I should also say that people in many countries are interpreting and understanding this paradigm in different ways. This is my way of understanding it. That first of all, we work with participation and not with top-down approaches. We are not working with moralizing approaches where the experts have all the answers. We need to involve students in defining what health and a health promoting school is. We are working with a broader health concept. It's not only related to disease, it's related to quality of life, well-being, but also to disease. We are also working with a health concept dealing with living conditions as well as lifestyle. So health is not only related to our behavior. Health is about the environment in which we work, in which we play, in which we live, and so on. And we are affected from that environment. And it makes no sense if we don't work with how can students in a school develop their competence to influence the environment in a health promoting way. We are also working with an action perspective. And when I say action, I define it as something that students are involved in deciding that they would like to do, and something that students they would like to change. So that there is a principle or a dimension of the action approach which is about students' participation as well. So this is a very brief way to describe the main approach that we are working with in my own country. And many people in Europe would say that they're working with some of the same ideas in this new approach. And we are up against a lot of cultural issues because people have been used, or some people would say that people have been manipulated to think of health in specific ways. This is just one way of illustrating that. So Many people understand when we come to a school and talk about health, it's obvious that all people there are not very interested because they think a school is about encouraging students to live a good life and to take action, to be democratic and so on. And when they think about health, it is all the opposite things. So many people in our culture have the understanding that health is everything that is not related to the quality of life. It is anything else. So this person here, I don't hope it is a teacher at a health promoting school. He has taken a decision, or maybe not, because he hasn't taken the first step yet. But he is looking in that direction, and he doesn't look so optimistic. So this is just to show you that is one of the barriers we need to overcome every time we work with health education and health promotion in schools. To clarify for people, for teachers, for students, for parents, that we are not working with health in that way. We are trying to take a look at health, so it's much more about developing visions, taking action, and so on. And this health concept, where we include quality of life, has tremendous implications for how we deal with health issues. I think actually we need to develop a new language when we speak about health. So it makes, for me, when you talk about health promotion within that paradigm, it makes no sense to talk about nutrition promotion. Because nutrition is it's related to disease, to fatty acids, to proteins, and so on. But you need to take a much broader look that is illustrated in this model here. That of course, nutrition is one of the dimensions. But the whole aesthetical part of eating, how does it taste, how does it look like, and so on, is also an important part of food and meals in the view of this paradigm. And the social dimensions are important. And as well the living conditions, under which conditions is the food produced, is it sustainable, and so on. So therefore health in this way is a much broader topic. And I think it makes much more sense if we want to link what we're doing with people's life. Because when people eat, you can make that test yourself. Next time you are visiting good friends or your family, after having a good meal, you can say, thanks for nutrition. It was fantastic. You don't use that word because it's not related to our life and our daily life and the values in our life. So therefore, the chances to link what we are doing with students are much bigger when we talk about, for instance, nutrition as meals and food and so on. And it has implications for all, similar implications for all other health areas. Participation. Why is this important? First, what is participation about? Participation is about giving students a genuine say in what we are doing in schools. So therefore they should actually be involved in developing what health is for them, what a healthy or health promoting school is, and so on. Why is it important? When I listen to the reasons people they give in my own country and in other countries, I can distinguish between quite different reasons. They might be overlapping or sustaining each other, but they are in principle different reasons. One reason is of ethical character. People say, well, of young people's life, so we cannot take the decisions of their behalf. For ethical reasons, we need to involve them. Another completely different reason is a kind of efficiency, or you could say learning efficiency, where people say, well, if we don't involve students, they don't take ownership. And if they don't take ownership, then health promotion in schools, they don't make any difference according to students' life. So this is a different reason, which is about effectiveness of what we're doing. And then you could say when you work with schools, you need to link up with schools' basic values. And one of the basic values in our schools is democracy. And I'm sure that you have similar statements in your school act as we have in Denmark, but we have one saying that you need to work with democracy in order to develop democracy, and so on. Democracy can only develop by using democratic attitudes and so on. So that is a third reason. If you want to work in a school and embed what you are doing in a school context, you need to work with participation and democracy. Then, participation is probably the most common concept when we look at health promoting schools around in Europe. Even more common than the health concept. If you ask people, coordinators or school coordinators or teachers working with health, what is characterizing health promotion when you look at what you're doing in schools? They will talk about participation. That is one conclusion. But another conclusion is that they talk about participation in many different ways. So there is also a risk, and always a risk, when a certain concept, pedagogical concept, becomes very popular and get the status of a buzzword. Then we talk about it as if we understand the same thing. But my point is that we are understanding very different things. A school health nurse might understand participation in one way. A teacher in art might understand it in another way. A teacher in home economics might understand it in a third way. So therefore we need to be much more precise about what we mean when we talk about participation. So therefore I try to distinguish between 4 different categories of participation. The first one down here, it's not much, there's not much participation. Teachers decide, sometimes they give an option to the students. Do you want to be involved in this? Yes or no? If you don't want, then we continue as we used to do. But then there is one here where the teacher is suggesting and coming up with ideas. And then the students, they enter the dialogue. And they end up, the teacher and the students together, with taking a decision and saying, okay, we're going to do this or do that. This category of participation is extremely important to be aware of. Many teachers in my country, they consider this not as participation. They think or they understand a participatory approach as something where they should step back as much as possible. The more they step back, the less they interfere with the educational process, the more participatory it is according to their way of thinking. And therefore they are mainly thinking at this one where students suggest and students they decide, so they're running the whole show alone, the students. This is, according to many teachers' opinion, the ultimate or the ideal participatory approach. And then there is a third one or the fourth one where students come up with suggestions, and then the teacher, he takes up the ideas, comment, provoke, supports, giving new ideas, and then there is a dialogue and they end up by taking a common decision. And my point is that there are not one of these 3 here that are the best participatory way to work. Actually, when we evaluate projects and when we talk to students about who got the idea of making this restaurant, as is one example in my own country, who got the idea to make this restaurant where you sell food that has been planned from this broad concept, then the students, they can't remember. And it's not important for them. And when we ask the teacher, it was actually, in one case, the teacher got the idea. And then the whole thing was modified, revised, and changed according to the students' opinions. And they ended up with having a project which was a common project. So what I'm saying here is, when we talk about a participatory approach, the key thing is not necessarily who gave initially the idea, but the key thing is the dialogue that is following a lot of ideas coming up. And it is this dialogue that has to be genuine, so students take ownership and become involved and so on. And so this is just one way of categorizing participation, so we get a little bit more possibilities to talk about different participatory approaches. And even when we look at a specific project, we can't categorize it into one of these 3, because a specific project will always involve a number of different phases or questions. And for each of these questions, you might be working with this one, or with this one, or with this one. So you can actually make this matrix as a description of a project if you want to look at in which way did teachers and students work participatory in this project. And of course my idea about presenting this is not to tell you that the most important or the where you need to tick to have the ideal project is here and there and there and there, but instead to offer you this as a tool that you can use when you want to get more precise about what do you mean when you talk about participation. And it has proven to be very useful in the planning phase among teachers and other health professionals, and also when the project is running, and also when we are going to evaluate the project. So this is one example of a tool that we are developing together with teachers and using in our health promoting schools. The action part seems probably to be the most important part if you look at why and when do students take ownership when they work with something. As I said before, the most important thing is not who got originally the idea, but the strongest factor for promoting students' commitment is if they, as an integrated part of what they're doing, take action themselves. If they try to influence the reality in the school, in the classroom, in the community, according to their own life, and so on. So this action part has proven in our projects to be the most crucial factor if we want to develop ownership among students. So genuine actions in an authentic setting is an extremely powerful factor to work with in a health promoting school. Then, a few words about how we are trying to disseminate some of these experiences in my own country. I'll just show you one example of that, which is called the IVAC approach, and you will get all the overhead transparencies. They will you can get them as PowerPoint presentations, so if you don't succeed to write down everything, you will get it later on. The IVAC approach was a tool that was developed because we said to ourselves, okay, when we look at all these different projects, and then if we want to write a kind of a recipe down, just in one page, that teachers and students could use, how would it look like? And then this is one example. And this one, which was developed together with a number of teachers and students at some health promoting schools, has now been integrated into the national curriculum. So this is the national recommended way of working for teachers and students when they work with health issues in schools. So this is just one example of how we try to disseminate some of these experiences. When you talk about competence for life, then I think it is extremely important to be concise about competence in relation to what. And it makes a lot of difference if you talk about social competence, competence to make your food, competence to repair your bike, competence to take action, and so on. So we have chosen to work with the concept of action competence. And action competence is simply the competence students they should acquire to be able to influence the surrounding society and their own life in a health promoting direction. There are a number of components of this competence. I have written some of the components that we've been working with down here. Knowledge, commitment, that pupils or students develop their dreams or the visions for the future. Visions for the school, for their life, for the family, for the community, for the world. To have visions seems to be a very important part of being action competent. And then to try out your ideas during the school time, to take action according to change real life conditions is an important part of being action competent. Some teachers, they formulate it in the way that they say,
you can only acquire action competence by taking action, which is a quite dramatic change of our teaching if we would like to follow that principle. And then to be critical. Students, they should learn to be critical, so they don't buy any messages just like that. No matter if they're coming from official bodies or from private companies or from the teacher or from anybody else. They should always have a critical stand, or take a critical stand to what they hear and what they learn. And just a few words about the knowledge component, because people, they often say, well, this knowledge, is that important at all? Because students know what is healthy and what is not healthy, but they don't use that knowledge. And then I would say, well, we need to rethink knowledge in a much broader way. So, ethics, that part of knowledge, it is about if I smoke, the risk of this and that increases. If I eat in this or that way, then the risk of these things increase in the later run. But there are also, if we want to think health knowledge from the perspective of an action-oriented thinking, then it is extremely important to look at the root causes. Why do we have bullying in the school? Or why do this happen? Or why do that happen? And then to use that to develop change strategies. So knowledge about how to change your life, or how to change a democratic setting, the school, the class, the local community. It is an extremely important knowledge part when you look at knowledge from a change and action perspective. And then knowledge about that things can be different, having knowledge about other ways of doing things. Probably it could be from another school, it could be from another country, or it could be from another class at the same school. It's always extremely productive to learn about different ways of doing things that we think that only can be done in one way. So therefore I think it is crucial to take a step away from what I would call a more traditional knowledge landscape, which is marked by this area here, which is mainly about ethics, problems, how big the problems are, how fast they arise, and so on. Because this kind of knowledge leads to two different things. It leads to worry. Students will get worried about all the problems and how fast they arise and so on. And at the same time, they will feel powerless, because if they don't work with developing their knowledge about how to change things, what the causes are, then they can't use that knowledge in a productive way. So therefore, the whole issue of knowledge, I think that is extremely important. The second last overhead is this one, where I try to sum up from a number of different projects I have been involved in my own country and also in other European countries. The first is that genuine participation, but in a dialogue with a professional, is maybe the crucial condition for developing ownership. So therefore we need to be much more specific about participation and participatory approaches, as I talked about before. The action part has the same effect, that if students take action, they build up their commitment, even if they don't succeed in getting the changes that they were aiming at. They get committed by trying to influence, trying to make a difference. But action should not only be looked at as something that is going on in the end of a project, but it should be integrated into the whole learning process, so students have the chance to learn from all the actions that they take. And then, even if students meet barriers, the projects I've been involved in tell me that barriers in itself can be extremely important for students to develop new strategies. But of course, it has to be done in close collaboration with a teacher. And the last thing, which I haven't had time, or I don't have time to deal with today, but we have a number of examples from different projects showing that this way of working, it is not only beneficial for the good and theoretical-minded students, but it is perhaps even more important for the students who don't feel that confident in a traditional school. that they get the chance to influence the agenda and what is going on. So this is some of the main conclusions and trends I have chosen to describe. And when you look at this Danish overhead, I'm sorry Derek, but I have translated it for Derek, you can see that you have the educational part in the middle, teaching, which has to be action-oriented and participatory, leading to the students' action competence, leading to that they take action, influencing the living conditions or the lifestyle. But then there are a number of factors that can inhibit or promote what is going on in teaching. It is the social cultural environment, the physical environment, the collaboration going on at the school, the collaboration going on between school and the local community. And of course you need this broader perspective to really understand what goes on in a health promoting school. But I would say, and I would agree with Keith Toes, the former professor at Leeds Metropolitan University, who said that he made a kind of a formula. He said health promotion equals health education times health policy. And his point was to say that if you only have health policy and no health education, then the result will be zero. And the same thing, if you only have health education but you don't have health policy at your school, the result will also be zero. So therefore you need to look at both areas. Thank you.